everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. My name is Anka. I'm a registered dietitian. I work for a practice called Sound Dietitians, where I get to come in and do these fun classes with you guys. And this is
My name is Ashley. I'm a dietetic intern, so I'll be interning for a couple more months with Sound Dietitians and just learning, and I'll be presenting one of the recipes for this class today.
Yeah. So today we are talking about how to make your own baby food. But before we get started, I just want to thank Skagit Regional Health for sponsoring this class and the Stilly Valley Health Connections for hosting. So we have a couple of different recipes prepared for you. So we have some purees, which is where a lot of parents like to start when they're starting, feeding solids. But we also wanted to include some more solid foods as well, especially if you, as a parent, decide you want to start with baby-led weaning. And as we progress into the class, I'll go into more details what baby-led weaning is. We also wanted to include some recipes that are more solid, soft solids that you can start with as well. So the purees we'll be making today is a mango, pear, and spinach puree, and then a cinnamon, quinoa, and fruit puree. And you can use these recipes as a guide and switch out the ingredients with what you have at home, basically. And then for the more solid recipes, we will be making some breakfast egg muffins. So the recipe handout that you have has a couple of different variations in terms of ingredients. We chose the Dr. Seuss one, the green eggs and ham. So you can read that to your kiddo and then go ahead and make these and have that association. And then we're also going to be making some veggie nuggets. So we'll actually start with the cinnamon, quinoa, and fruit puree. We're going to be switching back and forth between the different recipes depending on where we are in the preparation of them. So your quinoa and fruit puree recipe calls for some dried quinoa that you then boil. So we already did that. We already have it. It's been cooling. So we just did half a cup of water, let it boil, added our quarter cup of rinsed quinoa and let it cook until it puffs up. Then put it to the side. And then your recipe says you can use either peaches or plums. We chose plums today, so I already cut them in half, and I think I'm going to do quarters as well, just to help with the cooking process. And we have a pot of water that's just bubbling away over here. And we're going to be adding these plums to a steamer basket just on top of that boiling water. And we're just going to let them steam. I'm going to cover it and turn up the heat just a little bit to let that steam. And then we're going to, while that is cooking, we're going to move on to the veggie nuggets.
Okay, so for the veggie nuggets, it's going to be really simple ingredients. We'll start out with the carrots and zucchini. And prior to adding all these ingredients to the food processor to make our mixture, we're going to want to grate the carrots in the zucchini and then squeeze out the extra moisture in a towel. And just so it looks like about this consistency, and then we will start adding our ingredients into the food processor.
And for the carrots, we are using actually already pre-shredded carrots. You could absolutely just shred your own carrots, but that was just a better option at the grocery store today. So you can absolutely take shortcuts like that. It is definitely a time saver.
Yes. And then next we're adding our cannellini beans, and these are rinsed and drained to make sure the extra moisture is out of those beans. It's going to make the mixture stick together a bit better and get rid of some of that extra sodium that's typically in the canned beans as well. And then we'll be adding the cheddar cheese. And then our dried herbs can be any herb mix you'd like.
So this was an Italian seasoning. Just makes it a little bit easier. Most people have Italian seasoning at home. Yeah.
And then we're gonna do about a tablespoon of fresh chopped parsley. And then 1/4 teaspoon of garlic. But if you would like to add more, you can always add more to taste if this is um, not enough. And then Anka, do you want to help me with the
Yes.
food processor?
So we're going to process all of these ingredients first before adding our panko and egg. So, and we want this to still remain chunky. So we're just going to pulse it. But we still want the beans to not be whole. So why don't we
Use
get
a
a
spatula.
spatula to get this? These plums are just kind of going a little wild. Okay.
I think we might be able to add in the egg and
Yeah,
the.
let's go ahead and do that.
And then lastly, once the mixture is combined but has a little bit of chunks remaining, then that's the point where we want to add in the panko breadcrumbs. You can use other breadcrumbs in this recipe, but we are using panko today. And then 1 egg. And then we will process that.
Okay. Let's see.
And then just pulse until combined.
Yep. Let's see. Yeah, that looks combined. The egg is dispersed throughout. Okay, Ashley, and I'll have you move this into a bowl. So we're going to be adding this to a bowl so we can put it in the fridge so the mixture basically firms up.
And then we'll put it in the fridge for about 15 minutes.
So for this recipe, this would absolutely be appropriate for, a kiddo that's 9 to 12 months. But if you wanted to start with introducing solids first, so instead of purees or doing a mixture of both purees and solids when your kiddo is ready to eat, what we would recommend is maybe trying to steam or cook these individual ingredients like the carrots, the zucchini, the beans, and having your kiddo try them individually before making these patties and trying them all together. So kiddos are typically ready to start eating solids anywhere from 4 to 6 months. However, if your kiddo was born premature or has developmental delays, that might be a lot later. So just making sure that you're checking with your pediatrician to see when it is safe to start feeding solids. So typically with solids, we want the kiddo to be able to sit upright, unsupported, and also be able to hold their head upright so they're not all wobbly. And if they show an interest in eating, like if they're, grabbing towards your food when you're eating, that's a good sign that they're probably ready to start eating solids. Again, just checking with the pediatrician to make sure that it is safe to do so. Um, so typically there's kind of two routes that we recommend when we're talking about introducing solids to kiddos. You can start with purees, and typically that's kind of the more traditional route, I would say. With purees, there are pros and cons to both of those. Typically, you can buy a pre-made product and that saves you time, or you can make things yourself and that can be a little bit more time consuming. Purees tend to be a little bit less messy because oftentimes there's a caregiver that is feeding these purees to kiddos. And you'll see with purees, when kiddos start eating them, they typically will gag less. And then as they transition to more solid foods, you'll see more gagging. And gagging is just a natural response to, putting things in the mouth, and it actually helps kiddos learn how to eat. And it's best to not interfere when they're gagging. Just kind of let them figure it out, move food around in their mouth so that they basically learn how to eat. However, I would highly encourage looking into the difference between gagging and choking. So there are pictures and videos online that shows you kind of what gagging looks like and then choking, some symptoms of that so you know like when it's time to interfere with that. Okay, so let's move on to our breakfast egg muffins. So like I said, we're doing the Dr. Seuss one. So I already have my muffin tin. I greased it pretty well just to make sure that these egg muffins don't stick. And we already prepped all of our solid kind of add-ins. So we have some ham that we just diced. So I'm just going to equally divide this amongst the 12 muffin holes. We're basically just adding all these ingredients, the eggs on top, and then we're throwing them into the oven. And again, you can customize this however you want. You have all those different variations to kind of give you some ideas of what you could add. You could also just start real simple with just eggs that are cooked in the muffin tin to just see how your kiddo reacts to them, especially with allergies. We want to be mindful of allergies and introducing allergens really early on into the feeding process so that you're able to identify what allergies your kiddo has. And then I also have some chopped broccoli. So this I just chopped it as finely as I could. So this is going to be one of our green components for this variation. Okay. I just want to make sure that I have enough room for all of these other ingredients. And then we have some frozen spinach that I just chopped finely. You could use fresh spinach. With the frozen spinach, it is it is pretty watery at this point. It's starting to thaw, but some of that water has can evaporate too. With frozen spinach, sorry, with fresh spinach, there's that potential that you could add it and then it leaves a lot of water in the mixture. So you can try it with both and see how it works. Okay, and then we have some green onions that are just finely sliced. So that's our third green component for this recipe. All right. And then your recipe calls for Monterey Jack cheese, but we went with a cheddar just because that's what we're using in the veggie nuggets. And to kind of cut down on waste, we just wanted to use the same cheese. Okay. I did a little too much. And you could use whatever cheese you want, or if you find that your kiddo is allergic to dairy or is lactose intolerant, you can always just skip the cheese. All right. And then we have 12 eggs that I'm just going to beat a little bit. And I'm actually going to add a little bit of salt and pepper to this. Not a whole lot of salt because the ham and the cheese are already salty. With kiddos, we want to be, mindful of, especially with younger kiddos, with how much salt we're feeding them. So the general recommendation is you don't want to add any salt to anything under the age of 1, just because their kidneys are very small and they don't process salt very well. So you want to keep salt to a minimum for kiddos younger than the age of 1. And then it's always a good idea to just be mindful of how much salt you're adding to your family's food, just in general for heart health and kidney health. Okay. And then I like to, when I'm doing like a preparation like this where we're pouring eggs, using like a measuring cup that has a little bit of a spout can be really helpful at just pouring the egg mixture. Oh, and that was a little too much. Okay. And that's okay. Sometimes messes in the kitchen occur. Think I might have overfilled the veggies just a little bit. So I'm going to use my fork to kind of move them around. Ashley, do you mind just checking on the plums with a fork or a knife to see where they're at in the cooking process? Right. Okay.
They are tender, but still a little firm.
Okay. We'll just leave them a little bit longer. Okay. So when we're talking about introducing allergens to kiddos, we want to start with one allergen at a time. And then you want to start introducing allergens basically as soon as they are okayed by your doctor to start eating solids. So the way you would start introducing allergens is you would start with one allergen food at a time. So the main allergens are going to be wheat, dairy, eggs, shellfish, fish, nuts, peanuts, tree nuts, soy. And so you would pick one of a food that has one of those ingredients, and you would start very low and slow. So the general recommendation is starting with about an eighth of a teaspoon of that food at a time. And then if there's no reaction, slowly increasing it. And to prevent allergies, we want to um, have our kiddos eat allergen foods frequently throughout the week just to help prevent an allergy from occurring. Okay, I will clean that up after I put this in the oven. So these are going to go in the oven for about half an hour, and we're putting it in the oven at 350 degrees. So it's this top one, and I'm actually, just to be safe, I am gonna put just a baking sheet underneath, just so that these don't actually, maybe I should have done this ahead of time. I don't want them to overflow. These are filled pretty far up. Um, and then Christina, why don't we do a shot overhead? Tell me where you want me so we can look at these.
To the right, yeah.
There we go. So this is what they look like before. Okay, and then we're gonna do an after once they're done. Okay. All right. And then I'm going to set, I'll just do a 25-minute timer just to be safe. And Ashley, do you want to grab the mixture for the veggie
Yes.
nuggets out while I clean up the egg mess that I made? So going back to allergens, again, when we're introducing allergens, we want to start low and slow. And it's also best to introduce allergens first thing in the morning or sometime in the morning because sometimes it can take up to 4 hours for an allergy to start showing symptoms. So you want to be sure that your pediatrician office is still open just for guidance. Definitely, if you're noticing any type of symptom that is abnormal for your kiddo, giving them a call and asking them for guidance. Can you wait it out or should you go to the emergency room, basically? So, never mind. I need this. Okay,
Okay.
take it away.
All right, so after our mixture has cooled in the fridge for about 15 minutes, just for time purposes today, we did 10. We will prepare our nuggets to put them in the oven. So at this point, we should be preheating the oven to about 425 degrees, so it's ready to go once we're finished. And so we'll need one beaten egg and then about 1 cup of panko breadcrumbs or any other breadcrumbs that you may have on hand. And then we'll take about 1 tablespoon of the mixture and we'll form a patty. It should stick together pretty well. And then we will coat that in the egg. And then after that's coated in the egg, then we will put it into the panko breadcrumbs and kind of coat the patty so it'll have a nice crispy texture once out of the oven. And then we will repeat that process and it should make about 20 nuggets, depending on how big your nuggets are. Could be more, could be less. But yeah, and that should be it. And then we'll put it in the oven for about, what was it, 20 minutes.
20 minutes.
Yeah, so it'll be super easy recipe and it's prepared. It doesn't take a lot of time to prepare and cook.
Yeah. Okay. So while Ashley is doing that, I'm just gonna check on our plums again. Just to see, are they soft? Yes, they definitely are soft at this point. So I'm just gonna turn off the heat. Okay. So for the plum, the cinnamon quinoa and fruit puree. Okay. So we're basically going to add in all of our ingredients to a food processor and we're going to blend it into a puree. So we have our plums. I'm just going to dump them in our food processor, or I'm actually going to use the blender for this one. And the reason I'm using the blender is because of that quinoa. I'm just finding that this blender is a little bit more powerful than the food processor. And with the quinoa, you want to make sure that it's nice and smooth and blended for this recipe. So again, we just cooked our quinoa. This is white quinoa. You could use tricolor quinoa. You could use red quinoa, whatever quinoa you have on hand. And the quinoa is going to help provide fiber and vitamins and minerals and protein as well. From the plums, you get a lot of fiber and vitamin C, some vitamin A, some anti-inflammatory compounds as well. All right. And then we're adding 3 bananas as well. And the nice thing about this puree recipe is you can actually batch prep and freeze these. So my favorite way of freezing baby food is either the ice cube method, where you basically spread out the puree into ice cube trays. You freeze them and then you remove the ice cubes and put them in a freezer safe container or bag. Whoops, drop some banana. Um, and then once you have it in the freezer, it'll stay good for a couple months. Or you could also do the method where you add, you take your puree and you spread it evenly into blobs, basically on a sheet tray that has parchment paper. And you do kind of a tablespoon or two at a time, and you make little blobs, and then you freeze those. Then you can take those, put them in a freezer safe bag, um, and just have them ready to go. And to thaw them, you can literally just take out however much you need and put it in a bowl in the fridge and thaw it out. Yep. Okay, so we have our bananas. I'm going to add a quarter teaspoon of cinnamon. So this is going to give it a nice sweet taste. With kiddos, we want to expose them to a variety of different flavors and tastes. Really early on, that's going to help a lot with preventing picky eating later in life. So don't be afraid to give them herbs and spices, kind of tone it down on the spicy spices. But if your family, is used to using spice in cooking, definitely exposing your kiddo to those flavors early on is going to be really helpful. All right, and I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of water to this to kind of help it blend, but I'll see if I need to add a little bit more. Okay. And the most important part, I need to plug it in. All right. And then I'm going to cover you guys so you can't hopefully hear how loud this is going to be. Hello? Okay. Hold on. It's just stopping. I don't know why, but I'm going to do that again.
Maybe.
I know this blender is my arch nemesis, I swear. It's blending well, it is. It's just not very, cooperative, but that's okay. Okay. I'm just going to check it a little bit for smoothness. I want to blend it just a little bit more. What if I do a pulse? Okay, that should be good enough. So let me pull this out of the blender into a bowl so you guys can see how pretty it is. It's a nice pink color. And so this recipe, and with any fruit, like fresh fruit, veggies, or grains that you're adding to a puree, this recipe should be good in the fridge for about 2 to 3 days. But after that, you want to freeze it if you're not going to use all of it. Okay, so that's our, I'm going to try to make this a little pretty so we can take some pictures at the end. Is this a good spot, Christina? So that's our plum, cinnamon, and our quinoa puree. And I'll just leave this to the side. Again, you can use peaches. That would be really yummy and give it a nice, beautiful color. Okay, and then we're going to move on to our other puree, but it looks like Ashley is
I'm almost done.
She's almost done, so let's put those in the oven. Okay. And then Ashley, that bottom oven is at 425 degrees, and we'll add it in there for
I'm gonna
About 20
add
minutes, right?
20 minutes. Yes.
Okay. So we're going to move on to our mango, pear, and our spinach puree. So we're going to start with medium saucepan. We're adding a little bit of oil to this. I'm using avocado oil. You can use olive oil as well to get just those healthy oils, those healthy fatty acids. And then we're going to be adding our spinach to this. So it's 2 cups of spinach. I'm just going to eyeball it. And we are looking for this to get nice and wilted. That's about 2 cups. And let me grab a spatula. You could also use a different leafy green if you wanted in this. You could do kale, you could do Swiss chard. And it is highly encouraged to, try a variety of different things with your kiddos. Again, it really helps with picky eating and kind of preventing picky eating from happening later on in life. Although some pickiness is totally normal from ages like 2 to 6, we do see that a lot. And oftentimes it's just kiddos want to be more independent and make choices. But sometimes it can be just related to food aversions and things like that as well. So if you feel like the pickiness doesn't um, resolve, definitely bring it up to your doctor. Because then they might refer you to a dietitian to come up with some tips on how to introduce foods in a way that your kiddo will accept foods. Okay, so our spinach is nice and wilted. I'm actually just going to add it to our food processor right away. You could just put it in a bowl to let it cool down a little bit, but I know this food processor handles heat pretty well, so we should be good on that. And then I'm going to put this to the side so we can actually prep our fruit for this. So I already started on the pears. And Ashley, do you want to start on the mango? Just peeling the mango. So the pears, we peeled the pears and then we're just working on coring them. And then we want to cut them up into chunks. So you don't have to go too small. We're going to be cooking these down so they'll get nice and soft. And then the food processor will do the rest of the work.
You want me to peel it or
Yeah, go ahead and.
never peel it?
Okay, that's okay. Here. So let's.
I usually cut it up, but that's how I usually do it.
Oh, yeah, you can do that. How do you usually
Okay.
do it? You cut it?
I want to see how you do it.
Okay, so why don't we demo
Okay.
two
I was like, I
ways?
usually don't peel my mangoes, but
Okay, so I like to peel the mango first and then cut it up. You can cut it up and then peel it off. So what I just did is I just made a cross set or an X with my knife. I didn't go too deep. And this will allow me to basically peel the skin. And depending on how ripe your mango is or the type of mango, could be a little bit harder or not to do this process.
so you made the cut right
Yep.
here.
So
Okay.
you want to do it not on the side where the stem is, but on the other side where it's nice and fleshy and soft. So then we're peeling this. Okay, we have our peels to the side. And then there's a big seed in the middle. So we want to feel around with our knife kind of where that seed is. And you want to make basically 2 cuts along the seed. And then there's still going to be some flesh on the outside. So at this point, you can just kind of move around against the seed to get as much of the mango as you possibly can. So do you just eat the peel?
No, 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 no. I usually cut it the way you're cutting it now, but
Yeah.
then I make and then I
Oh,
dice it up inside the skin and then
okay.
I scoop it out. So
Okay. That's another way
but
to do
I
it.
like
Yeah,
your way better.
totally.
This seems more efficient. So
Okay. Okay.
yeah. I don't think you can you eat? I don't think you can eat mango, the skin of the mango, can you?
I don't think you can
I
eat the
don't think
skin
you
of a
can.
mango.
So
Yeah. Yeah, probably not a good idea. So there are multiple ways
yeah.
that you can cut and dice a mango for sure. You can also just cut it with the skin on, and then when you get to this part, say it has the skin, you can then
Mhm.
use a glass to basically push it against the rim, and then it should slide out from the skin. Although sometimes that takes a little bit more practice, and it can be a little messier, but that's also a method. You could honestly just Google or, you know, search on social media how to cut a mango, and you'll find so many different ways. Um, just trying them out, see what feels the best. And this is just a red mango, but you could use whatever mango you have available at your local grocery store, basically. Okay, so we have our mango that's cut up. I'm just gonna throw away this waste. Just get rid of it for a moment.
So we have a question in the Q&A box.
Yeah.
Someone said, how much food should an attendant on this day eat, and what food should we focus on? Proteins, possibly?
Repeat the first part of the
How
question.
much food should a 10-month-old eat?
Yeah, it's kind of so with kiddos that are younger than one. Um, so up until age one, the main source of food is still going to be either breast milk or formula. Um, so the main nutrition is coming from those. With solids, now is a time for experimentation. So I would say let your kiddo dictate how much they want to eat. Kiddos are very in tune with what their body is telling them in terms of hunger and satiety signals. So you can always trust that a kiddo will eat however much they need. And just know up until age one, again, that main source of nutrition is going to come from either breast milk or formula. And solid foods are basically just going to be for fun experimentation, getting them used to eating solids, not necessarily providing the sole source of nutrition. Proteins, yes, you definitely want to try out proteins. So whether that's your meat, your fish, your eggs, seafood, especially since fish, seafood, eggs are considered allergens and dairy as well. So definitely trying those out. Um, but also trying out a variety of different fruits and vegetables and grains as well. Again, to expose your kiddo to a variety of different foods so that they accept them later on too in life. Yeah. Okay. So we're going to be using the same saucepan that we wilted our spinach in, and we're going to be adding some water to this. Okay. Wait, I'm looking at the wrong recipe. Okay, I was supposed to leave the spinach in there. Never mind. We're just going to be adding I'm just estimating, that's about 2 tablespoons of water. Our pears and our mango to the saucepan. Again, you could have left the spinach in there. I did not, but that's okay. And we're just going to let this, I'm going to add it actually to a medium heat. We're just going to take this mango. All right. And you'll see that these puree recipes, so it says that it makes 4 servings. again, just basing it off of how much your kiddo will eat. A 6-month-old that is just starting to eat solids, might eat a few tablespoons of food at a meal, and that is totally fine. Versus a 12-month-old, you might end up giving them, a cup or two of food, depending on the kiddo, right? And how hungry they are. So again, just basing it off of what your kiddo is willing to eat and wanting to eat in terms of quantity, and not worrying too much about, is your kiddo eating enough? Oftentimes, kiddos, even if they go a few hours or even a day without eating, they will make up for it in the following day or in the following days following that day of not eating enough. So don't worry too much, especially early on in life. Kiddos are very in tune with how much they actually need to eat to grow. Okay. So we're gonna let this boil a little bit so that it gets nice and soft. The mango is already pretty soft. The pears, not so much. Um, so we're just gonna let that kind of soften up a little bit. And I'm gonna cover this too, just to help encourage that steam to cook. Nope, wrong one. There we go. How are our veggie
The veggie
nuggets?
nuggets need a little bit more time.
Okay, that's okay. And then let's see. Okay, our egg muffins are looking good. They're starting to brown a little bit. I'm actually gonna poke. I want to poke them with a knife to see. Okay, they're still pretty. They still need a little bit of time. They're a little liquidy on top. So basically with the egg muffins, they kind of cook from the bottom up. So that liquid egg is pushed to the top, and it'll continue to cook and brown and be nice and solid. Um, yep. And we'll just
Yeah.
wait for the
Those
for
are
the
starting to
veggie.
brown a little bit too, but I think they need
They
some
need
more
more
time.
time. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yep. Yeah. All right. And we'll continue to mix this as well. So that water is definitely starting to bubble. It smells really good too. And again, you could add, other things to this. You could do a mango and pineapple. You could do, instead of pear, you could do apple. Um, just being creative with what you're offering, especially with the purees. You can add a ton of different ingredients and kind of make it to your taste. You could do meat purees as well. That's totally fine. And adding veggies and pureeing those together. Um, or you could also just have your kiddo eat solid strips of tender food too. So that's basically what baby-led weaning is instead of starting with purees, you're starting with solids, but you're picking soft foods that you can cut into strips or cubes that are easier for kiddos to actually eat. I think it might be. Oh, I'm just going to cancel this.
Okay.
Oh, it's just our timer for our muffins. Um, so basically, you want to prevent the kiddo from choking. So you want, like, if you're offering meat, you want it to be really nice and tender, especially if they're, 6-month-olds. They don't have teeth yet. They're chewing with their gums, um, oftentimes. So you want to be really mindful of how soft that food is and avoiding anything that is hard or crunchy, or that could be really difficult for them to mash with their gums. So by cooking your fruits and veggies and your meats and things like beans can be a really good starting food as well, a really good protein to get started with, because you can cook them until they're really soft or get canned ones, and then just cut them up until they're really small textures. With baby-led weaning, it can be a messier process because oftentimes you're just putting, cut up food on a plate and then your kiddo is playing with it. And part of that play is really important for their development and their exposure to food as well. Even if that food doesn't go in the mouth on the first try, that is totally fine. They're still being exposed to the texture and the smell and the taste, and it can still be a really positive experience for a lot of kiddos. Okay. Yeah.
So they said, when the baby's a year old, how much food for each meal? You talked about 1 to 2 tablespoons in the ice cube tray. Is that about a serving for 11 pounds?
So for a 1-year-old, I would say, depending on what it is, like for example, if you're doing like a fruit or a veggie puree and no grains, a few tablespoons can be considered a serving. If you're doing something like puree with like meat and grains, you can do a little bit more, like a quarter cup, even half a cup. Again, like gauging where your kiddo is at. Different kids will eat different quantities, depending on, their size and their hunger level and their activity level as well. So you can start with couple tablespoons of a fruit or veggie puree, and then about a quarter cup or a third of a cup of your meat and your grains, just to make sure that they're getting some energy and some protein and things like that. Or I should say protein and grains. So that would include like your dairy products, your beans, your fish, your seafood, as long as those are safe and your kiddo isn't allergic to those should all be okay. Um, and kind of gauging to see like, okay, if they eat that entire plate, you can add more. And if you're, thawing out, especially like early on, you can thaw out a little bit more of the food and see, kind of gauge, at that point in time this month, how much they're eating and to give you like if they need a little bit extra, you'll have a little bit extra in the fridge. But yeah, just gauging again based on your kiddo. It's kind of hard to say, how much because it is very individualized. Like if you are concerned or if your pediatrician is concerned about growth and that they're not following the trends that they should be following, it's definitely a good idea to either check with your pediatrician or even ask them for a referral to see a dietitian so that they can actually, a dietitian can, calculate how much protein and how many calories they need to eat and if they are actually meeting that with the food that they are eating, or do we need to consider something like a nutrition supplement or a shake for a kiddo that isn't eating enough, whether it's they just don't have the appetite for it or there's food aversions that are going on or something else that is going on that's preventing more intake to meet needs from happening. Okay, this pear is, there are some pieces that are pretty soft. I'm just gonna pull it from the heat and just throw it into the food processor with that spinach. Okay, I'm gonna put this part. Our veggie nuggets are looking nice and brown.
I made them a bit thicker, so there's about 15 for the full recipe. So I'm thinking they're needing,
A
I
little
think
bit
they're
longer.
finished. I don't, they're browning, but I almost feel
You could
I'm gonna
always,
poke one.
you can poke one with
Yeah.
a knife or a fork and see if they're hot on the inside.
Okay.
Okay, so while Ashley is checking that, I'm gonna go ahead and puree this. Again, you could use a blender or you could use a food processor or even like a food mill if that's what you have available. That can totally work as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and pulse this. And use a little bit more. And then I'm going to use just my spatula to get all of these off the side. And we want this to be, as smooth as possible. There's still some chunks of pear that are just hanging out at the top here. I'm just going to process it one more time. We're kind of running out of time. Otherwise, I would have let the pears kind of cook a little bit longer. All right. So if, it kind of depends too on the produce that you have available, how watery or thick this puree might turn out. Ours is pretty watery. You could always add a little bit of extra water, or you could add breast milk or infant formula to thin out your purees. That is always an option as well. So I'm gonna add this to a bowl. And I'll just do this big one. And this is such a pretty green color. All right. So is this a good spot for showing? So there's our puree again. It's pretty watery. So the other one is a lot thicker, and because that one has the quinoa, there's a lot more starch. Um, but the smell's really good too. So there we go. There's our puree, our other puree. And let's actually, I think it's time to take the egg muffins out. Christina, why don't we come over here with them?
And the veggie nuggets too, since we're
we're almost at time.
yeah.
Okay. So for these egg muffins, if you have a older kiddo, like a toddler, you could just give them the egg muffin and have them just chew on it and eat it. But for younger kiddos, what I would suggest is cutting up your egg muffin into like small pieces or even strips to make it easier for kiddos that are in that 6 month to 1 year range. Makes it a little bit easier for them to eat. Even I would say up to two, like just cutting it up would be a good option. And then here's our veggie nuggets. So same thing. These are nice and firm. So I would say like definitely cutting these up for kiddos younger than 2 into small pieces, and then they can just kind of chew on them as they go. Any last minute questions, Christina? All right. Why don't I bring these over just for last view? How does this look? Can they? Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Christina will be sending you the recipes after the class. And then we did do a presentation, I think, early last year that talks a little bit more about what foods to start with when we're transitioning to solids and how to make your own baby food. So definitely check out that presentation on the YouTube page. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a good rest of your day.